During these early, dark, uncertain days of the pandemic, they showed up so every American could keep going. They worked tirelessly through the pandemic to ensure that families and communities got the deliveries they needed during these difficult few years. And because of the labor agreement, those rail workers will get better pay, a 24% wage increase over the next 5 years, improved working conditions, peace of mind around their health care by capping the cost that workers will have to pay. And it's about the right to go to a doctor or stay healthy and to make sure you're able to have the care you can afford. It's all part of this agreement.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Thursday, September 15th, 2022. Welcome to day 604. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis shipped about 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard without warning to make a political point about the record number of apprehensions at the southern border. While the two flights were paid for by Florida taxpayers under a state program to transport undocumented immigrants to so-called sanctuary destinations, they originated in San Antonio, Texas. The group of migrants, which included children, were told that they were being transported to Boston. Separately, Texas Governor Greg Abbott used a state-funded program to send 2 buses of migrants, between 75 and 100 people, to Kamala Harris's home in D.C. The White House, meanwhile, called the actions by the 2 Republican governors cruel and shameful political stunts, and the White House press secretary accused Abbott of alerting Fox News to the bus's arrival instead of the Department of Homeland Security or the city of Washington. Meanwhile, the Senate delayed a vote to protect same-sex marriage until after the midterm elections. A bipartisan group of senators have been working to alleviate the concerns of Republicans in an attempt to persuade at least 10 of them to support the bill and overcome a filibuster. Despite the efforts, Republicans complained that their 50-member conference would view a vote as politically motivated if Chuck Schumer forced a vote before the midterms. The Respect for Marriage Act would enshrine federal protections for same-sex and interracial marriages, and it would also repeal the 1996 Defense of Marriage Act, which recognized marriages in the United States as between one man and one woman. At the same time, the White House announced a tentative agreement between rail carriers and union leaders to avert a nationwide strike that threatened to cripple U.S. supply chains. After 20 straight hours of negotiations, which included Biden and other administration officials, workers won several of the concessions they were seeking, including better pay and more flexible schedules, such as time off for doctor's appointments. The parties had been negotiating a new contract for several years and were facing a 12:01 a.m. Friday deadline, the end of a so-called cooling-off period. Union members, however, still have to vote to ratify the agreement, which is not expected for at least a couple of weeks. Biden called the deal to avoid what would have been an economically damaging strike a, quote, big win for America, end quote. Moving on, mortgage rates topped 6% for the first time in 14 years and more than double their level a year ago. In an effort to tamp down inflation, the Federal Reserve has raised the federal funds rate by 2 full percentage points over 4 meetings this year. As a result, mortgage rates have gone up, and with inflation still high in August, the Fed is expected to raise the federal funds rate yet again when it meets next week. Rates, however, are still below the historical average of 7.8%. In other news, Mark Meadows complied with a subpoena from the Justice Department's investigation into the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The former White House Chief of Staff, who turned over the same materials he gave the House committee investigating the attack, is the highest-ranking Trump official known to have responded to a subpoena in the federal investigation. In New York, the Attorney General's office rejected an offer from Trump's attorneys to settle the civil investigation into the Trump Organization. Attorney General Letitia James is reportedly also considering suing at least one of Trump's adult children as part of her inquiry focusing on whether Trump fraudulently inflated the value of his assets. Separately, the Trump Organization is going to trial next month for criminal tax charges in Manhattan. And finally, Trump threatened the Justice Department and warned that there would be big problems if he's indicted over his mishandling of classified documents after leaving the White House. Trump, while speaking to conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt, said an indictment would result in, quote, problems in this country the likes of which perhaps we've never seen before, end quote, and said that Americans would not stand for his prosecution. Trump added that an indictment would not stop him from running for president again. And in the polls, the Associated Press says 45% of Americans approve of the job Biden is doing as president, up from 36% in July. And Politico says 70% of Americans don't think politicians are informed enough about abortion to create fair policies. 44% believe abortion will become less accessible in their lifetime. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.